It's not how big the book is, it's how well you read it. Does that make sense? Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I am doing the My 10 Biggest Books tag. This tag was created by Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. It only has one prompt. Show us your 10 biggest or largest books. Not necessarily the books with the longest page count, unless that equals a big size. Show us books that have a larger physical format than normal. In order to get this done right, I'm going to be holding up some comparison books. For mass market paperbacks, I've just picked out this book to show what a normal mass market paperback looks like. And I will be showing this book to show what a normal hardcover book typically looks like. So I went to my shelves and I found 10 books that have a larger physical format than usual. I am excluding art books and table books because they always have a very large physical format, and I don't think that relates to anything interesting, because in these books that I'm going to show, something in the publisher made them decide to make these books physically larger than a normal book. Let's start off with Hunger's Brides by Paul Anderson. This is an historical novel about Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, who at the time of her death in 1695 was arguably the greatest working writer in any European language. I'm not going to make a comment about her greatness or non-greatness, but this is a big physical book. Let me hold up the mass market paperback. Sorry for fumbling, these books are heavy. And now show the hardcover. You see, it's a little bit wider than normal. And if you look on the inside of the texts, you will see typically very large margins. But in these margins, there's occasional images. There are occasional words in the margins. I'm not sure how well this shows up. There you go. How well it shows up on video, but I guess they had this larger margin to show those extra words on the side of the text. I don't know why or what they're related to. I have not read that book yet. I'll get around to it someday. Now this one is slightly of an art book type. This is Victor Haffwitt by Thomas Bernhard. It is a short story. There is the mass market paperback. There is the typical fumble. There is the typical hardcover. Now, if you open this book up, you will see very little words on large pages with some artwork. And that's what the book's like. Thomas Bernhard was an Austrian author. He was a notorious misanthrope. I did read this short story or this book a number of years ago, and I don't remember a whole lot about it. But it's a beautifully produced book, and it's nice to look at the pictures. The Machinery of Night by Douglas Clegg. Sorry for that glare on my Mylar covers. Douglas Clegg is an American horror author. He got popular in the late 80s and 90s and in the aughts and tens. He's fallen from favor, I think. I don't think he publishes that much anymore. But this is a collection of his short stories. This is the paperback, or mass market paperback comparison. And this is the hardcover comparison. This was produced by Cemetery Dance, which produces very nice hardcover horror books. And you can see, again, this has very large margins, and they put the page number in the margin. I have no idea why they made this book so large. The Bog People by P.V. Glob. This is a work of history about the bodies that are dug up in peat mosses. Some of these bodies have been there for 1,000 years, but the peat moss preserves the body so well that homicide investigators are brought in to confirm that that body has been dead for 1,000 years. We don't care if the body was murdered or not. We're not going to solve it. Now, this is produced by NYRB Classics, and I'm going to show you a little bit different, is that this is the typical size of the normal NYRB Classic, but this one is taller and wider. I suspect that NYRB Classics just used the printing from an older edition before they bought up the rights, and they didn't try to reset the type. That's my best guess, but this is a fascinating work of history. Alexander to Actium, The Historical Evolution of the Hellenistic Age by Peter Green. This is, of course, a history book of the Greeks and the ancient Greeks. I have not read it, but I purchased it when I was working at Borders Books and Music back in the 90s because it looks like a fascinating history. And there you can compare it with the hardcover and compare it to the mass market paperback. Peter Green is well known for his history and his translations of works from the ancient Greek. Another work from ancient Greece, the Odyssey by Homer. This one is translated by Alan Mendelbaum. It was considered a new verse translation back in the 90s. I don't consider it new anymore, but let's take a look at the size of this book. And you open it up, and again, you get very wide margins and some extra lines of text because it is taller than most books. I have not read this particular translation. I have 3-4 other translations of the Odyssey, but this is a very beautiful and nice hardcover edition of the Odyssey. In Layman's Terms, edited by Kelly Laymon. This is a tribute anthology of horror short stories to the horror writer Richard Laymon. Kelly Laymon was Richard Laymon's daughters, and there are a lot of very good horror authors in this anthology. You have Norman Partridge, Bentley Little, Jack Ketchum, Alan Bates, Brian Keene, Brian Freeman, and others. I have read 1 or 2 stories out of this collection. It is very nice. Again, this is published by Cemetery Dance. They published the oversized Douglas Clegg anthology that I showed earlier. And if you look inside, you'll see some different formats. Some of these tributes are nonfiction. Some of them are short stories, like that. So again, Cemetery Dance just makes large hardcovers, at least some of the time. Landscape Painted with Tea by Milorad Pavic. He is a Hungarian. No, I'm sorry. He was from Yugoslavia. Of course, that country is no longer called Yugoslavia. But if you look at this, again, this book is just a little bit larger than normal. He is most famous for his novel, Dictionary of the Khazars. When Dictionary of the Khazars was published, they published it in 2 editions, the male edition and the female edition. Now, the author said that that's sort of like just a translation and a gimmick. It does not mean that men are supposed to read the male edition and that female is supposed to read the female edition. It was just a way to distinguish the editions. But what's different is there is a paragraph that is different in the Dictionary of Khazars in each edition. And it changes what the story means. Now, I don't remember what this story, The Landscape Painted with Tea, is about. And I don't know, again, why they have it in such a larger format. Large margins, once again. I guess there are some publishers that just get their kicks from large margins. The School for Atheists by Arno Schmidt. Arno Schmidt was a German experimental novelist. His text is really complicated to read. You pick it up and you're going, is this some sort of scientific textbook? Let's see if I can give you some good examples of what's in the text. You see there's box text, different line formats. I believe there's different font sizes and so forth. But that is the way that Arno Schmidt wrote his stories. Very experimental. I've tried reading some of them. Very hard to get through. And now for the last book that qualifies as my biggest and largest book. Pardon me for a second. Bottom's Dream by Arno Schmidt. Another novel translated from the German. In this story, there is a translator translating Edgar Allan Poe into German. That's all I know about this book. It is humongous and heavy. Oh, and again, if you look at the text in this book, you will notice there are at least 3 columns of text in that book. I have to put that down. It's just too heavy to hold. So yeah, it's a very complicated and unusual novel. I don't know anyone who has finished reading that book. I've heard that you're not supposed to try to read this book from page 1 to page 1400. It is about 1400 pages. But you read a page or 2, maybe 5 at a time, and sit and ponder about what he wrote. Go read something else, and go back to Bottom's Dream, read some more pages, and think about what he wrote. I've never tried it, but someday I should. So those are my 10 biggest physical books. I'm going to tag some people who may or may not have large physical books. You do not have to do this tag, of course, if you don't want to. I'm going to tag Chris at Liminal Spaces, Michael K. Vaughn, Steve Donahue. I'm sure Steve Donahue has some large physical books. Scott at Some Other Character, and MJ at Reading This Life. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading large physical books.